My RedwingRC Yak 55 came in this heavy-duty cardboard box that did a good job of protecting it. I looked everything over very carefully and couldn't find a single ding in it anywhere. All of the graphics on the Yak are made from covering themselves and applied very well. If they're applying these graphics at assembly line speed, they have very good people doing it. RedwingRC uses the heavy-duty pin-style hinge, and at the ends of the big surfaces they put two hinges close together. The ends of these surfaces are where you have the most force, and they put double hinges at both ends. Look at the root of the wings, and you can see how cleanly they assemble these planes, and that they use carbon fiber indexing pins to make sure the incidences stay right. And those carbon fiber pins are quite long because they are structural. RedwingRC gives you the option of placing the Aileron Servo inside the wing under this cover. Or there is a rectangular mounting hole next to it under the covering. Both of the servo positions line up with the control horn. When you look at how much of the horizontal stabilizers are actually movable control surfaces, you get the idea that they expect this Yak to be pretty active in the air. They use a heavy-duty fiberglass plate at the end of the horizontal stabilizers to keep these very rigid. Plus there's a carbon fiber tube that runs through these as well. Between the size of the rudder and the double hinges at the top and bottom, it looks like the people at Red Wing are expecting us to hammer this thing around. In addition to what appears to be a longer than normal carbon fiber tube, you get a very nice hardware pack with this kit. By this point, I'm usually tossing out a bunch of the cheap hardware that come with a lot of planes, but not so with the Red Wing version. And they provide the spats-type wheel pants that all Yaks are supposed to have. The round fiberglass cowl has a nice paint job that matches the covering perfectly. And inside we find the plywood ring that makes cowl alignment automatic. The Yak's fuse has lots of access that makes setting everything up in it a lot easier than a lot of planes are. And the fuel tank has all the internal plumbing done already. Red Wing adds these 3 carbon fiber spars to make the overall frame more rigid and to make it easier to pick this thing up on the bottom without busting the spars out of it. And it's all set up for canister, and pull cables are already installed. You do have to adjust the lengths and crimp the ends, but most of the hard stuff is already done. Before I started assembly, I did run over all of the seams with a medium hot iron just to make sure. And over the whole plane, I think I had 3 wrinkles that I had to heat out of it. Running over all of these little edges now can save you a lot of problems down the road. It only takes a few minutes and it's a lot easier now. Something else I always do in a new airplane is to hit all of the joints that I can reach with thin CA. I didn't find any joints in this plane that looked like they needed help, but I hit them all with a little bit of CA just in case. If nothing else, it toughens up the wood around the joint a little bit. The only problem I had installing the control horns was with the rudder, where they contacted each other inside the rudder. I just took a good side cutters and trimmed both of them down a little bit, and that let them fit into the rudder fine. I used 30 or 45 minute epoxy on all of my control horns. The only control horn I've ever had pull out happened when a plane went through a tree and it took a bunch of the control surface with it. Rough up the control horn, make sure you get enough epoxy on everything, and take your time. Anytime you have a support tube running through the horizontal stabilizer, you have to watch for clipped hinges. Very often the proper location for that support tube interferes with big hinges, and they clip the ends of a few of them to make sure it clears. I always lay the hinges out in order as I remove them for putting epoxy on, and that way I can keep them straight with which end goes where. And when I assemble the hinges, I always tape the control surface so it can't accidentally slip back out if we trapped any air in by the hinge. A couple pieces of tape across the gap on either side of the control surface prevents us from having surprises later. And now with all the control horns and hinges in, I'm going to call it a day. In the next segment, we'll start mounting servos and do the pull-pull system, mount the motor, and maybe even see if we can do some preliminary checks to see if we got the CG right so we know where to put things.